When I look at you, I let love take control, and everything I have is yours. My heart, my body, my soul. I'm under your spell. Oh, how I feel.
Hello and welcome to Globetrotting with Gillespie. Here I am, Dana Gillespie, at the TAM, the Temple of Art and Music, which is, of course, is one of the coolest places in all of London. And I'm going to interview a man who I've known for many, many years, and it's very suitable that behind us, I hope you can see it, is the sign of love, because we're all into love and doing good for the world. And I'd like you to meet this guy because I want to ask him, first of all, where did we first meet? Please welcome Ben Taylor.
Hi.
Where did we first meet? And you were called Benedict Taylor then, weren't you?
I've always been called B, really.
B,
But, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But back then I had a career as an actor, and as an actor I was Benedict Taylor. But everyone's always called me Ben or B.
Ladies and gentlemen, he was a heartthrob. How many years ago was this?
Weren't we all?
Well, yeah, that's true. No, but you particularly, because you were starring in those kind of Barbara Cartland type of, you know, they wanted some gallivanting
that was more
man.
towards that was more as the career was on the slide, actually. But yes, Barbara Cartland was amongst them.
And I bumped into you quite by chance in India, where you were doing the Far Pavilions.
Yes,
and everyone knows the Far Pavilions.
Also, quite a long time after we met. So we met through Pete, so your cousin Pete.
Peter Buxton.
I met age 14 because we did a school swap. He was at a very posh school and I was at a very unposh school.
He was at Eton, and
I
then
was
you went to
and
Eton.
I was at Feltham Comprehensive, and we did. The schools arranged an exchange. 6 pupils from each swapped, so that we could see how the other half lived, and we've sort of carried that experiment on because we're still great friends and we still take each other to things that we might think the other one is interested by. So.
Well, actually, that's quite a thing to have been, because I think they only do about 2 swaps to go to Eton, don't they? I mean, per year. It's not like it opens its gate to loads of people.
I've got no idea how they carried it on. When we did it, it was the first time they'd tried it.
You were
and
the
we
guinea
were the guinea
pig.
pigs. Yeah. And the best thing about that was 3 really good friendships came out of it.
They always say, actually, that where you send your children to school, you have a friendship that should carry on in life. And when that works, it's great to see your old school friends. However, I've gone off on a tandem, as I say, so let's go into something far more interesting. Did you want to be an actor, or did you fall into it, by the way?
Yeah, I completely fell into it. I was 9. So, and I went in the car with my mum to an agent in Teddington. My younger sister is very beautiful and very dark-skinned. I'm from a family of 5, 6 kids, and 3 of us are adopted. So Tim and Femi are Nigerian twins, and the youngest one, Fauzia, is Kenyan. And my mum and dad spent a lot of time living and working in Africa, and mum has a very strong maternal instinct, and somehow we went out to Africa with just me, aged 1, and we came back with
A family.
A family of 5. And then Fauzia joined us later. She's much younger than the rest of us. And I was in the car going with mum to this agent's office, and the agent said, oh, I could get him some work as well. My sister was doing kiddie modelling, and mum said, no, 1 in the family's enough. And she phoned that afternoon and said, what if it was the Royal Shakespeare Company? And mum went, oh, well, that could
Was that your
work.
first gig?
And I worked with them for 5 years. So,
Yay.
so a week later, Judi Dench was my mum, and I was on stage, 8 weeks later after rehearsals at the Aldwych, and I worked with them for 5 years and sort of got the bug. And then I thought that was something I'd just do as a kid, and that I'd probably get a proper job, but I was ruined by then.
Fate decreed otherwise. Mind you, your mother's pretty amazing. I know your mother too, and she's written many books.
Yeah.
Her name's Allegra Taylor.
Allegra Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your father, remind me what he did. He made films, didn't he?
Yeah, so Dad was a documentary producer. He used to work for the BBC. He started with the... That's why we were in Africa originally, as he was working as an editor first. Then we went to Africa, and he had a job training up Nigerian talent to make West African television. He really fell in love with the place and became the BBC's Africa specialist. And we moved back to the UK in 1965 when BBC Two opened, and Dad had his first opportunity to direct proper British TV, and in colour, and for the new fledgling BBC Two. And so that was his whole career, was working with the BBC in documentary features.
So after you left, I mean, once you're into your acting, and then should we say after the Barbara Cartland, when you said it was the decline. I mean, let's face it, acting has a bit of a sell-by date to it. I found with me, and suddenly it wasn't as interesting as music, which of course is one of your loves.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what happened after then? After you how did you drift into the next bit of your phase of your life?
Well, I haven't admitted that I've given up acting yet, you know. But,
You mean if the right
but
part
acting sort
came-
of gave up me. But
Yeah.
this thing I keep it ticking over because I still enjoy it, and I did it full on for years and years. But what's the right answer to this? The right answer is I'm still doing the same as I've ever done, which is I'm really drawn to working with creative people to make some sort of a thing happen. And it could be a documentary film, it could be a drama, it could be acting in that, it could be helping to produce it, or it could be being the cameraman or the sound recordist. I love working in a creative environment with enthusiastic people to make something happen. And what I've found over time, as the acting slightly slipped, the music, which had been a hobby until then, I'd been a mad collector of music, and then particularly soul and disco music, and then dance music, and then suddenly rave happened, and I was ahead of the game as far as the music collection worked, and I had a great flat that doubled as a club, and
Where was that?
That was in Ifield Road.
Oh, right, Fulham, for those that
yeah.
don't know.
And that was the emphasis shifted. The parties became so good. The music that I had in my collection was absolutely what people wanted to hear, and the other people who were fledgling music collectors who became really good DJs, we were all hanging out together and going, oh my God, have you heard this? This is brilliant.
Well,
It was all American imports. You had to stand in a record shop in Soho and solemnly go through their pile of records. And there were only 2 or 3 of these shops. And so you got to know all of the other people who had the same sort of passion for this new thing that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Sort of techno-trancey stuff.
It was B-sides of dub disco to start with.
Right.
But that was because, you know, I was going to the Embassy Club and Monkberry's and Legends and those late 70s, early 80s clubs in London, and getting turned on by this music that was coming from America that no one else was hearing. You know, disco had a bad name, but it wasn't the same as disco. It was sort of
beat was better.
twisted jazz, but with a dance sensibility, and we were really, I was really evangelical about making up mixtapes, giving them to people, and saying, forget that punk shit. You know, listen to this.
Yeah. Well,
you got some of those?
Yeah, I still have the B. I've got them because, of course, I drive a car with a cassette machine in it, and I will
At
never
least you've moved on from the 8-track.
No, I will never give up I've always had a cassette machine in my car. And it reminded me when you said about having to sort of go to a specialist shop. It's a bit like that in the early 60s. If you wanted to get blues, you
Absolutely.
had to go to
Yeah.
So you have to sort of snuffle out.
That's
like
part of the fun of it, though, wasn't it? Because
Yes.
you'd get to know the people who ran the record shop, and you'd walk in and they'd go, oh, hi, and, you know, oh, I've got a great thing that came in for you. You're going to love this one. So there'd be that relationship in finding music. It was very social.
Well, actually, I know you put on functions, as they call, you know, in the old days. You know how the word funk came about? It's because people used to put on functions in the 1910 and 20s, and it turned into from functions to funk.
Really?
So you put on, you put on functions.
Funky-tions.
Very functions, and I know that some of them I've played at. I've been lucky enough to play at. I've played all sorts
We've
of
been
music.
lucky enough to have you.
Well, either way, but there's nothing like one of your festivals. Tell me how you got into that, because I mean, they're really specialists. They're not.
Okay, so we started doing parties in the flat in Fulham.
Yeah.
And they were great, and everybody wanted to bring a mate. So we started to hire other venues.
Yeah.
The Cam Leopard by Chelsea Bridge, play Arches in King's Cross and
Right.
Elephant and Castle. There's Corsica Studios around the corner from here. Every venue we ended up working in London,
Yeah.
just to bring our group of extended friends together.
Yeah.
So it was never a publicity thing. It was always, we want to bring someone, and we could easily fill a 400-person venue. You know, starting out with the 50 people who used to have a dance in my flat.
Yeah.
Then your cousins, Pete
Yes.
and Robbie, were having I think it was a cricket match and a picnic for one of their birthdays.
It was a cricket match.
And Pete, knew what I was doing in London and said, "Would you play the music, or would you bring a sound system and be the music?" And
Yeah.
I said, "I'd be happy to. How much do you want?" "I don't want anything. Just let me bring a few of my mates, because they're going to love the house. They're going to love those cellars, and we're going to have a great time."
We're talking about Kimberley Hall, of course, which happens to be one of, in my opinion, one of the funkiest houses in Norfolk.
It's
in fact, in
probably
Britain.
in the world.
Yes,
It's seen some better times, seen better times than most.
Yes.
And so we did that. We had they did their cricket match. We had a barbecue in a lovely little walled garden, and then we set up a sound system in the cellars, out of earshot of their mum and dad,
Yeah.
and had a great party, and everyone loved it so much they said, "Let's do it again." What was quite funny about it is that we were bringing together two quite disparate groups. So there was my fluorescent ravers from London, and their toffs in fancy dress,
Norfolk.
and Norfolk toffs in fancy dress, and there was a period where people were eyeing each other up, thinking, "We don't usually hang out with you, but we'll give it a go." And by the
And
end
it
of
worked.
by the end of the evening, they'd all fallen in love with each other, or fallen into bed with each other, and
Or married. Some of them married.
Oh, I mean, it's really gone on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more about the reason for continuing with it, but the reason for starting it was that it was sort of by chance. It was the right time, but there was something very special that happened about the chemistry between what they brought to the event, originally Pete and Robbie, and then Robbie and Ness. They brought a particular sensibility, a particular way that they wanted to decorate the place, or the friends they wanted to entertain. And I brought this London rave
The rave scene.
idea to it. But the reason that it's carried on is that what started as bacchanalian revels, has started as something purely hedonistic. It was obvious that there was something else going on that we weren't aware of, or that I wasn't aware of to start with. There was something fundamental and profound going on about the nature of what happens when you bring people together in a safe, beautiful space. And that wasn't what we were doing with the raves in London. We knew that there was this great outpouring of emotion that was partly fueled by the drugs, but also fueled by the times that we were living in and the optimism of that period. It just took a while to work out that there was something more going on than just having a party.
The word got round.
Yeah.
I mean, it did. I know that when you're talking about Vanessa, Pete and Robbie, they're all my Buxton cousins, by the way, from Norfolk. They didn't really want it advertised, although occasionally it slipped out in, let's say, the Tatler or something, and it was called Toffstock.
Which I hated.
I know,
Bloody
but
hated that.
however, you then you've moved on, because you've moved on to the Give Festival now, which is where I played.
Well,
I
actually,
played quite a few times.
Give is what we called the London parties. And so we took Give to Kimberley,
Yeah.
but because Kimberley was at Kimberley,
Yeah.
obviously that's how it was all thought of.
Yeah.
So then when it had run its course, using Kimberley as the venue for it, we were just reverting to our original name when we moved to a new venue. And
Well,
yes.
well, I think, I mean, I've already reserved my weekend in July for next year.
Damn right.
Because I know what a great, it's one of the best ways to spend a weekend that you can do, which is now in a place called Stamford Hall, is that right?
Stanford Hall, which is Leicestershire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I know that also, forgetting about that, because you don't mega advertise it, but people can go, you said, you explained it rather nicely to me, people can go if they...
It's not exclusive, but we don't advertise it, but you do need to know about it. So
Yes.
so you know, if you've got a mate who comes, they'll tell you about it, and you'll go, oh really? That sounds quite good. You go on the website and
And then you find it.
And it's not obvious that it's going to be as good as it is, and that's sort of on purpose.
Yeah.
We have a few headliners, but it's quite low key. People aren't really coming for the bands and the DJs. They're
It's the
coming.
place
They're
and
coming
the
for the
vibe.
place and the fact that we've been getting together annually for nearly 30 years.
People know each other.
People have grown
Yeah.
up together.
Yeah.
We've had kids. You know, the first one we did, nobody had kids. Now our kids are in their mid-20s and 30s.
And enjoying the party too. Now, I also
Taking
know-
over the party.
You're a big traveller. Well, before COVID, I don't even want to mention that actually. But you know, you've been filming and to faraway places, places with Sufi leanings. Dare I say it? I
Yeah,
mean, in
yeah,
a
yeah.
way. What's the? You made a documentary, or have you made?
Yeah,
several?
I've made a few documentaries. I think you've seen the one in Kashmir where I went undercover and just tried to be low key and managed to get some great interviews, not least with the Mirwais of Kashmir, which is the equivalent of the Pope. He's
Yeah.
both the spiritual leader of Kashmir's Muslims, that's 80% of Kashmir, and he's also the leader of the Hurriyat Conference, which is a 26-party amalgam of separatist parties, and he represents them with the Indian Congress. So very interesting people I got to talk to, and the chairman of the Kashmir Sufism Society, and just various good people. And when I was
Interesting.
there, I was almost the only Westerner in Srinagar. It felt like a friend of mine had said, if you ever want to go to Kashmir, now is the time, because there was a slight shift in the amount of tension that was there, and I'd always wanted to go, and I slipped in and had a great 4 weeks there, just funded it myself and came out with something that's
A great
it's
documentary.
It's a really good thing. And then just before lockdown, I spent 4 months for the BBC, for BBC 4, doing a documentary series called Treasures of the Indus, which was looking at the spread of civilizations from the Indus Valley down through the Indian subcontinent, starting starting 2,000 years ago with the Indus civilization, and then looking at the Mughal civilization that came after it, and also at the Vedic tradition, which had been pushed completely down south. But we got the joy of doing that whole trip, and getting privileged access to places and talking to writers and politicians, and often the making of these things is the really good bit.
Yeah.
The document you make at the end of it, you can often take it or leave it. This wasn't bad, but the actual making of it was
Fabulous.
absolutely fabulous.
So, do you have future plans? Apart from, I know that I'll be at the Give Festival next year, unless I'm pushing up daisies.
Okay, well, you ask why we do Give. Give, what developed for me is a philosophy out of it, and there were a few things I needed to do to make sure I wasn't just raving mad, that I'd found something rather than lost something.
Yeah.
And you can never be quite sure.
Yeah.
And so I went very clean and serene, and I thought, if what we're experiencing here is valid, it needs to be valid sober, and indeed it turned out to be more fun, and I could stay up later, and I could have better conversations, and I could play better music, and I haven't stayed clean and serene every day of my life, but when I'm working, that I find that really helps, and it underpins my commitment to the philosophy of this. And there are two things that I'd want to say about it. One is that I deeply believe that from whatever spiritual tradition you come from, or whatever creative tradition, or whether you're a healer, whether you're a scientist, there is some core experience that most people have had in their lives that they feel so passionately about that they want to articulate. And then they articulate that through the tradition that comes most easily to them. Either it's their cultural tradition, or maybe if they're a mathematician, it's through numbers, or they're a painter, it's through colours. If you're a musician, you're bringing it through the speakers. If you're a theologian, it will be translated as a spiritual, profound experience. But we reach for the tools that we are most comfortable with to articulate this flash of inspiration that we might have at one point in our life. So that is to say that in a way we're all talking about the same thing, but using different language to describe it. And the playground that we can set up in the safe, beautiful space that we make at Kimberley or at Stamford Hall allows people to explore each other and to tune into each other in this safe way. And what I hope is that we can set up conditions whereby at some point people might go, wait a minute, this speaker and this musician, and they're all sort of talking about the same thing, but coming at it from a different angle. So I'm driven by trying to articulate that thought, that we're all talking about the same thing, but we say it in different ways.
You said there were two things. Was that the one thing merged into two?
I've probably forgotten the other one.
But that's an important thing. And as, of course, we're sitting under the love sign, because actually, in the end, it all boils down to love in whatever forms. You've got to love what you're doing, whether you're a mathematician or a scientist or whatever. It's driven. I just love, as you know, the give thing, and I'm really happy that we get a chance to talk about it. And I want to thank you for getting into the Temple of Art and Music, which is pretty amazing. Have you seen a place
No, I've had a good walk round. It's fantastic. Yeah.
It is.
I wish I was hungrier than I am. You could be eating here for days.
Yeah, you can eat all sorts of food from all over the world. So I want to thank you, Ben, for coming onto the...
Well, thank
it's
you.
not a sofa.
Thank you very much for...
And we'll have to get some trance music to make it suitable for the whole interview.
I'll play you anything you like. But
He's got great taste.
So you have some chill out. I can give you some nice world music, whatever
Always
you like.
want that. Anyway, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Ben Taylor for coming and talking to us on Globetrotting with Gillespie.
I wanna be with you. When you do what you do. The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind I was. Lovers don't just finally meet somewhere, they're in each other all along. So when I heard your voice, I got shivers up and down my spine. Now all I want to do is look at you and make love divine. I'm